Hey everybody, Delegate798 here. This is my salute of Marvel and DC comic book franchises, man. Man, I've been meaning to do this video for a long time, but I never got around to doing it. I'm gonna do this video now. Both Marvel and DC are on a roll. Yes, even DC. I've talked a lot of crap about DC in previous videos, but it's DC that is good. They're making the great decisions and they're doing all the good stuff. It's Warner Brothers who I need to talk about, because it's Warner Brothers who doesn't respect the characters and the legacy of DC comic books. So it's Warner Brothers I need to take my anger and frustration out on, because right now, after rewatching several DC movies, reading several DC comics, seeing some of their cool video games, like I said, it's DC that respects the legacy and their characters. It's Warner Brothers. The only thing I hate about DC is that Warner Brothers owns them. Warner Brothers owns the license to them, and they make BS decisions like Shazam being in a DC movie onto itself, being its own movie onto itself, despite the fact that Shazam is a DC character and they own the rights to the DC movie universe characters. But he's in his own movie separate from the DC cinematic universe. In my opinion, right there, that is BS. But I'm going to talk more about that in a Warner Brothers rant. But let's talk about how awesome DC are. Of course, DC, they've had so many awesome writers. I'm going to do another video in the future saluting all those awesome writers. There's too many writers to list. It's too many writers to list. Some of the awesome writers include like I said, I'll do it in the future because there's so many awesome writers from DC and Marvel, so I'll do that in the future. But like I said, so many awesome writers and so many awesome comic book characters, so many awesome, memorable, iconic comic book storylines, and yeah, of course it all started with Superman. Then they made Batman. Then they made Shazam, I didn't even know this, Shazam briefly in the 40s outsold Superman comics. I don't know any DC character that ever outsold Superman. So that is a feat unto itself, that Shazam was able to outsell Superman comics. Then of course there was the Green Lantern, the Flash, the Martian Manhunter, Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman was actually one of the earliest ones, before Flash, Martian Manhunter, and Green Lantern. Then of course you got oh yes, Robin, who of course debuted as a sidekick for Batman. Then of course later you established the Justice League. Then of course you established the Justice League, and you did several cool storylines with the Justice League. You have the original Justice League. Then you have hold on right here. Hold on, I have it right here. Hold on. I must have left it upstairs. Oh well. You have so many awesome storylines. Like you have the original Justice League International, which was a comedy, the earth-shattering If Night Crisis, which they had in 80s and a 2000s versions, and the 2000 version was one of my all-time favorites. I have it right here. Where all of the DC characters fought, the Justice League and the entire Green Lantern Corps fought the the unstable Superman, and one of my opinion, the greatest bad guys of all time, Superman Prime. Superman Prime. Then of course you had then of course yeah, here was the comedy Justice League International I was talking about, the comedy one, which was this one was more slapstick and had a lot of jokes, but still was an awesome story, and was really exciting comic and was very different from the other DC comics. Then of course you had I think I left it upstairs, but yeah, you had you also had the JLA series. Then you have another one. I forgot to bring it down with me, but you have another one called DC 1000, which has a futuristic Batman, Superman, and a Justice League team. DC 1 million, which has a futuristic Batman and a futuristic Superman and a futuristic Justice League team. Then of course the Green Lantern, he had several awesome stories, like I think it was called Emerald Knights, where he finally gave into fear. I mean, it was the storyline featuring Parallaxes. I keep forgetting what it was called, but it was iconic because it was when Al Jordan finally gave into fear and became Parallaxes himself, became the new form of Parallaxes. Then you got War of the Green Lanterns, which I've just finished reading twice and going to review soon, which had all the Green Lanterns fight in this giant war. This comic was actually 17 issues, but I found the paperback issue, which has every issue in this. I found the paperback issue, which has every comic in this issue. This was the last major Green Lantern storyline before they restarted everything with the New 52. Then of course you had Batman. You had Batman series. You had the original Batman. Hold on, let me find it here. Hold on. You have the original Batman, which is just titled Batman, which ran from 1940 all the way until 2011 before being started over again with various stories under different writers. And one of them, of course, is one of my all-time favorites in the early 2000s, the Hush storyline by Jeff Loeb and Jim Lee right here. And so yeah, several awesome storylines. Here was one of the original. This was from the 80s. From the official Batman comic book series. So like I said, so many awesome stories. And you had The Dark Knight Returns. Another awesome story. Yeah, so many awesome stories. And then of course I don't have a lot of his comics with me right now, or down here right now, but Superman, one of my all-time favorite comics. Who Can Beat Superman, where various holograms of Superman are destroying the city and Superman gets framed for these crimes and actually has to form a partnership with Lex Luthor, whose allies betray him. Awesome comic book. Right here. And one of the originals too, under the Action comic book storyline. So yeah, that's all the DC stuff. Now let's move over to Marvel. Of course, Marvel. You got You got X-Men, one of the more all-time favorite stories. X-Men and the Alpha Flight. You got Days of Future Past, which I've heard so much about and finally got to read here on YouTube thanks to a guy named Classic Comics and Cartoons. Guy named Classic Comics and Cartoons who uploads a lot of classic comic books and plays and several other stuff on here. Then of course you got the popular 90s X-Men lineup from the Uncanny X-Men. Actually, this whole thing is the Uncanny X-Men, but this is the 90s lineup under Jim Lee and John Byrne, who did their version, the iconic. There's two comics in here. There's two comics in here. There's two comics in here, and then of course you got the Fantastic Four. I have a lot of their comics, but here are two of their comics here. And of course, this one introduced me to the martial arts superhero based on late martial artist Jim Kelly, Luke Cage. And then of course I have another one on here that features. I have another one that features the superhuman team, the Inhumans. So Marvel also did a lot of Star Wars comics. I own one of their comics right here. They also did a lot of Star Wars comics. Then of course you got Iron Man. Two of my all-time favorite stories with Iron Man. One where he fought an assassin named Titanium Man in an awesome Titanic battle, where Iron Man managed to stop a building from falling. In the cinematic universe, he can barely pick up a car, but here in this comic, he stopped the building from falling. Then of course, you got Iron Man and the Living Laser. You got Iron Man and one of all-time favorite bad guys, the Living Laser, because he was different from all the other Iron Man bad guys who were usually just a bad guy in a robot suit like he was. Besides the Mandarin, he's one of and Crimson Dynamo, he's one of Iron Man's other superpowered bad guys, and this was an awesome comic right here. I have two comics in here. The other one is the one I was talking about that featured the Inhumans, the other Fantastic Four comic that featured the Inhumans, where they team up with the Inhumans to fight a cat-like alien bad guy named Abraxas. So like I said, so many awesome stories. And then of course, before I finish part one of this, before I finish part one of this, we got next we got Spider-Man, the Torment series. He has several awesome comics, from the Amazing, the Spectacular, but this is the one I own, the Torment series by Todd McFarlane, which he did before he left Marvel and created Spawn. Well, this concludes part one of my salute of Marvel and DC. All right, Doug out.